All right, what's good, y'all? We are about to get into a couple technique reviews here. So I'm always going to start one of these with athlete that I work with. Okay, so we're going to start with Adam here, and then I'm going to do maybe 5 or 6 videos that people have sent me in just to review their technique. So we're going to go over things that we do well, some things that we could do better on, and hopefully we can get something out of it. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with Adam here. Okay, Adam is a cross country and a track runner, and we're going to watch this real quick. Okay, so this movement here, just this single leg squat, okay, or a pistol squat off the bench is honestly a staple in my program. I have all of my athletes do this. It is a very good exercise for single leg strength, single leg balance, and just one of the best single leg movements out there. So Adam does a very good job here. Now, as we watch this, a couple things to point out. Okay, I always make an emphasis on any squatting movement that we're doing. It should always start with a hip hinge. So what I mean is, if we look at his hips, the first movement that we need to have when we are squatting, doesn't matter if it's single leg squat, front squat, back squat, body weight squat, doesn't matter what type of squat it is, you should always start this with a hip hinge. And all that is slightly reaching your hips back, just as Adam did here. Okay. So let me slow it down a little bit. That first movement is just slightly reaching the hips back, and what that does is create space for your pelvis to sit down into. Okay. From there, he can bend the knee. He can sit as low as he can. Okay. And I think here we're tapping the heel at the bottom, but we really want the hip to be right above the heel, the working heel, I should say. Okay. Chest is up, arms are out for counterbalance, and that just helps us stay balanced over the working foot, which is really the key to any squat, is just staying balanced over the working foot. So Adam goes again here, finds his balance. Notice each rep, he reaches his arms out in front of him, and he starts that rep by slightly reaching his hips back. Okay, so Adam does a very good job here with this single leg squat. Adam is now at the point when we do these that he is squatting off the floor. And I can't exactly remember if he uses weight or not, but he's probably one of the guys that is using weight as well. So a good example of a single leg squat there from Adam. Okay. Next, now we're getting into people that have sent me in their lifting clips for me to review, which brings me to this point. If you are interested in having me review your lifting clips, send it down. I'm going to have my email down in the description down below, coachrobstrength@gmail.com. Send it in there, and I will try to get you into one of the next videos. Okay, so we are working here with a conventional deadlift, okay? And I have this slowed down. Let me play it once at full speed, and then I'll slow it down to break a few things down, okay? So he goes, big pull, okay? Solid lift. This is a lot of weight here, man. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's 495. So this is over 500 pounds. I can't see exactly what he has here on the end. This is probably, if I had to guess, this is 520 maybe, 525, somewhere around there. Super solid lift here. So let me restart this, and I'm going to slow this down, slow it way down so we can get a better look at what's happening. First, couple things to notice. Okay, starting position is solid. So feet are right underneath the hips, which is what we want to see with a conventional deadlift. Think of this just like your vertical jump stance, right? Hopefully we don't jump with our feet way outside of our shoulders, okay? And we shouldn't deadlift like that if you're doing a conventional deadlift either. So I like the no shoes here. I'm a big proponent of no shoes with lower body lifts. It just gives you a better contact with the ground, and your feet are the foundation of everything that you do with any really lower body movement. So it's important to have a solid contact on the ground with your feet. Okay. So all very good there. We have a reverse grip, no straps, which is impressive with this amount of weight. And what I want to pinpoint here is watch the first movement. His hips are going to shoot up a little bit. Okay, so if I play here as he pulls, you see how his hips kind of shoot up. Now, there's a lot of coaches out there that'll say that's bad. That's not necessarily ideal, but with this amount of weight, okay, when you're working with some heavy weight, that is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, as you start pulling into the bar, if you're able to keep a strict starting position with your back completely flat and you're going for a 1 rep max attempt, it's probably not a 1 rep max attempt. Okay, so with some heavy weight, it's okay to have the hips shoot up a little bit. It's okay to have a little bit of rounding in your back as well. Okay, and that's probably uncommon for you to hear, but that's the truth, especially if you're like I said, going for a 1 rep max. So big pull here. kind of a hard angle to show here, but look how close the bar stays to his body, right? Bar stays super close to the body. Okay, once he passes the knee, the hips come through and he locks it all the way out. It's a super solid lift. Like I said, no straps. Super solid lift with that amount of weight, and really some pretty good technique. Technique stays solid underneath that heavy load there. Okay, now we're going to work into this next one. I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe this is a sumo deadlift. So I'm going to play it one time full speed. Okay, and then I will slow it down here. Now, I forget this young man's name. He is a high schooler, I believe, and I think he just recently got into lifting before this video. But a couple things we can take away here as I slow this down. Okay, so we have more of a sumo deadlift set up here. Now, I'm going to pause it here before he starts, but with this sumo deadlift, okay, so as he's just starting to pull it off the ground. Now, with the sumo deadlift, usually you want your feet wide, like he has it here, okay? But with that, okay, you want your arms to be inside of your legs. And I remember talking to this young man about this, saying, hey, move your hands a little bit closer so that your elbows are on the inside of your knees. That's going to give you a much smoother bar path if you're going for a sumo deadlift, okay? Now, from here, most sumo deadlift stances are even a little bit wider, but a lot of that is just preference. So if he feels good here, that's fine. I would just say move the elbows in a little bit closer. That's also going to allow him to get the bar a little bit closer to the body as he starts to lift this off the floor. Okay, so as we can kind of see here, he has a little bit of space between the bar and the body, which is not ideal. Okay, it's very similar to our squats. You want to stay balanced over the working foot. So that bar should track really the midline of your foot the whole time that you're pulling the bar up. Okay, so again, as he goes here, now similar kind of concept, his hips shoot up, okay, which again is not ideal, but with some heavier weight, that's going to happen. I think this is a little too excessive here. The reason I say that is because his legs are pretty much all the way straightened here. Okay. Now, if your legs are all the way straightened and the bar is an inch off the floor, all of the work from there is going to come from your lower back, and that is not ideal, right? With a deadlift, we mainly want to use our lower body. Okay, your back's going to work a little bit, but we don't want our legs to be straight when the plate is an inch off the floor, because again, all of the weight or all of the work is going to be done from the lower back. Okay, so that's what I would say to this young man here. Is I would say try to keep the hips a little bit lower. I would say put your arms a little bit closer so the elbows are on the inside of the knees. And from there is keeping the bar close to the body and just perfecting our setup. With a more dialed in setup here, this lift would be a lot smoother. And I communicated that with this young man. But all in all, I mean, good for him for getting in there and getting after it. Not the cleanest technique, but we all start somewhere, right? Um, okay, moving on here, we have, let me see. I believe I remember this. Okay, we're going for a squat here. Okay, setup wise, pretty good. Solid foundation with the feet. You can see him finding his footing, which is pretty good. Okay, depth is a little high for my liking. Every coach is different, but for me, depth is a little high. I'd like to see us get a little bit lower. So he hit 2 there with, I believe, is 315. So let me run this back here. Yeah, 315. Now, a couple things I would say. Okay, one, like I mentioned, I like the setup. I like him taking his time and getting his feet placed underneath him. A lot of times you'll see, especially with younger athletes, you'll see, especially with heavy weight, they get it out and they just, I don't know if it's anxiety or they're just nervous or they're just ready to go or whatever it is, but they don't even set their feet before they start the descent, right? So I like the fact that this young man takes his time to set his feet up, get his feet underneath him, and get them in a solid placement for him. One thing that I would say from here is we have no clips on the bar. Okay, for me, I work in a high school weight room. We have 50 kids, in each class that are lifting. So safety is of utmost importance, and we need to have clips on the bar. That's what I would say. At least if this were in my weight room, we need to have some clips on the bar just in case something goes wrong. Okay. Now, again, as we mentioned, depth is a little high for me. Usually, what I say with my athletes that I work with, okay, we want to have the top of the thigh to be parallel to the ground. Okay, now sometimes we'll go bottom of the thigh. Bottom of the thigh or the hamstring is a little bit easier to get parallel to the ground. But if you get the top of your thigh parallel to the ground, that is great depth. And that's something that I hammer with all my athletes is that before we worry about how much weight we have on the bar, we have to build up our depth, right? A lot of that has to do with mobility. A lot of that has to do with just finding a comfortable bottom position, which deals with your feet placement, what your hips are doing when you're squatting. There's a lot that we can break down there. But things that I would say that would help with mobility is one, rolling out your calves. Okay, if you've never used a foam roller on your calves here, it'll make a huge difference. Okay, in your ability to hit depth. Okay, so tight calves definitely limits your ability to sit down lower. Okay, now from there, another thing that we can do is just work on our hip mobility. So our adductors, our groin, okay, has a lot to do with how low we can get into a squat. Okay, so there's a lot of different exercises that we can do to work on our depth, but really the biggest thing and the most effective that I found is just hitting your depth from the very start of your program, right? Don't worry about the weight you have on. Just hit your depth and hit it throughout the rest of the full length of your program, and you're going to be just fine. Okay, a lot of times people will throw on a lot of weight. Okay, their depth looks good with lighter weight, but then they start throwing on weight, and you get into your quarter squats, which is no good. If that's the case, you have to take a little bit of weight off the bar and just focus on your technique. Especially if you're a younger athlete, this is a long game. Okay, lifting weights, athletic performance, everything that we're talking about here is a long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Okay, if you are in high school, you have years on years on years to build up a solid foundation of technique and movement. Okay, so don't rush it. There's no reason to rush it. Okay, now working into this last one here. Okay, I remember this clip because this is a very impressive clean here. I believe this young man is in high school. Okay, but super solid clean here. I'm gonna let it play out and then we'll break it down. Very solid. Very, very, very solid clean here. Okay, and if I remember correctly, he goes for the jerk too. Yep, it's a little too short on the jerk. Okay, but all in all, this clean technique is super solid. Very good here. So I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Okay, now a couple things to point out. One, starting position, right? I always like to hammer in our starting position because if you mess up your start, okay, if you mess up your starting position, everything else upstream is going to be off as well. So you have to get a good solid starting position. As we look, again, feet underneath the hips, just like your vertical jump stance, okay? Bar is right up against the shin here. Chest is up. The hips are above the knees but below the shoulders. All this very solid. Now, also notice he did a dynamic start here, which is where the hips come out and then drive back in. Okay, that dynamic start is very powerful. Whenever I clean, I do it as well. Okay, it gives you almost just like a jump start at the beginning of the movement. So I really like to see that dynamic start right there. He pulls it up. Good full extension here. I paused it a little bit late. Okay, let me see if I can pause it a little bit better here. But we talk about our triple extension whenever we're cleaning. Okay, or if you're snatching, if you snatch as well. Okay, but our triple extension, man, I'm a rookie here. Okay, our triple extension, boom, that's good. Okay, our triple extension here is from the ankle, the knee, and the hip. So we want our lower body to be fully locked out. Okay, so knee fully extended, hip fully extended, and ankle or foot fully extended. Okay, it's actually flexion, but it's a discussion for a different day. Okay, now I paused it a little bit early. Okay, the only thing else that's going to change here is going to be a little bit more up on his toes. So really all of the movement, okay, up to this point of the bar, getting it from the floor to the hip crease, is all done from the lower body. The arms are just there to guide. Now, once he bounces this, it's not the right term. Once he lifts this bar, okay, or pulls this bar, that's the term I'm looking for. Once he pulls the bar from the hip up to the front rack position, the bar already has momentum, and he's using his upper body to complete that pull into the front rack position. So, good catch, solid catch. Now, look from here. Look how high the bar is. He drops underneath the bar very quickly, and he has a solid foundation with his feet, ready to receive the bar. Good front rack position. He's able to handle the weight of that bar coming down on top of him. Okay, solid depth here. Really solid depth in this front rack position with 315. Okay, very impressive. Notice full feet are flat. Knees are pointing where the toes are pointing. Chest is up. Elbows are up. That bar is on the shoulders, and his hands are just here for balance. So he stands up out of the hole. Okay, good. He resets here, gets his grip on for his jerk. Okay. Now, even though he misses this jerk, this is a good attempt. Okay. As you notice, he's getting his breath here. He's getting ready to go. Okay. He bounces, gets a little whip on the bar. Okay. And here, man, we're close. We are close to this, to hitting this jerk. We are very close. Okay. Now from here, this being comfortable in this jerk stance, it takes a lot of practice. Okay, but he has a solid stance here. You can tell this guy has a lot of experience. He has a solid stance here, and I think if he were able to get that bar just a little bit higher off the initial push off the jerk, he would have gotten this. But he is super close. You can see him fighting for it. Okay, but just from here, he just breaks down a little bit with the hip here. Okay, and ultimately misses the jerk. But all in all, super solid technique from this young man. I forget his name, but super solid, clean technique. And shout out to him and everybody else that we reviewed. So thank you guys for watching. Okay, I'm gonna try to post a lot more just longer form content. Okay, I really enjoy breaking down technique and highlighting what we do well and highlighting some things that we can do differently to make the lifts a little bit cleaner. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have a lift that you want me to review, send it to my email down in the description, coachrobstrength@gmail.com, and I will fit you into the next video. And we are out. Peace.